Go ahead and open your Bible to Jeremiah chapter 38. Jeremiah chapter 38. Last week we didn't make it all the way through the chapter. We'd been on a roll, and so we just got halfway through chapter 38. So hopefully we're going to move a little bit quicker tonight because I want us to see the end of 38 and I want us to see what happens in 39. It's kind of a big deal. And as I mentioned and as we prayed, in tonight's story we're going to see good and bad, which makes it applicable because in our lives we see good and we see bad. We face both every day. And the great thing about what God has done for us and what God has given us is that we get to choose each and every day what we're going to focus on. Because you know in your own life you've had days where you could not see past the bad. That the bad was so bad that you were blinded to any good. That you were either going to wallow in suffering or choose to stay in pain, or whatever it was, that the bad was so big in front of your eyes that you couldn't see any good around it. There's other times in our life where the good of what we are going through or what we are experiencing is so big and is so good that we don't have any extra time or energy to bring up anything bad. And so we can all relate to that. But here's my question, because you know people, you're around people, you talk to people, you deal with people. Why do so many people focus on the negative? Why are so many of the conversations that you have with other human beings in this world have to be circling the drain? Pity? Because they want pity? Okay. All right. So people share the bad or the negative that's happening to them because they want you to feel sorry for them? Okay. All right.
You don't usually have to look for bad. It's usually right there in your face.
Okay.
A lot of times you have to look for good.
Okay. All right. So negative is the norm. It's easy to see the bad. It's easy to see the negative things. So you don't have to try. You don't have to work. You don't have to look hard to find something not going right. So it's low-hanging fruit. Okay. All right.
Good's not any fun to talk about.
Good's not any fun to talk about?
The way people act, like, just for instance, you know a guy that does nothing but good his entire life, makes one mistake. What do they talk about?
Okay.
They don't talk about the good.
All right. All right. So maybe we focus on the negative because it makes us feel better.
I think people elevate themselves by coming up with bad.
Okay. So they elevate themselves not by walking their own steps, but tearing down others. Okay. All right. Charlie?
To some extent, in my case, when I talk about bad stuff, a lot of times it's because I have a problem and I don't know what to do about it. Can you get your 2 cents? And if I get multiple perspectives on it, okay, so this is how I'm going to handle that problem.
Okay.
And when good happens, okay, don't have to think about that anymore. But, the bad stuff, it sticks out in my head that I've got to fix this and I have no idea how to do it.
Okay. All right. So seeking help. When things are going well, when things are going good, you don't need help with it. That's good, and I got it, and let's go. Okay. All right. Move on. Yeah. All right. Tori?
I think especially in our current, I guess you could say, political environment, there's a lot of this very valuable social currency in victimhood. It gives you a position of power and a position of influence.
Okay.
That maybe hasn't really been seen before the last 50 years or so. What do you think?
Absolutely. There is there is currency in the negative. And you bring up whether it's political or within our society, but there's always been currency in the negative. There's always, that's, a lot of times that's the currency we use with each other, is it not? That you know, we trade. I mean, currency is what we trade with, right? We trade in bad. My bad's worse than your bad. Oh, you wouldn't believe what happened this morning. Oh, you think that's bad? I mean, what do you do as soon as you hear somebody saying something bad? I can relate to that, and I got one lower. I can one down you. I don't one up you. I can one down you. And I think that's fair that we use that as a currency. Jeremiah chapter 38. We are coming to in 39 something very bad, and God has warned his people. God has warned his people over and over and over again. He has told them what's going to happen. He's told them how difficult it's going to be, and they are right there. They are right on the edge of it. We've seen bad things happen to the prophet himself. We've seen Jeremiah. Last week, Jeremiah was in a hole. He was in an empty well. I mean, he is, excuse me, he is chest deep in mud. There's no water down there. He's just stuck, and he has to be rescued by a foreigner. And so Jeremiah has had to suffer. The nation has had to suffer. The enemy is around town. And they are almost surrounded. We are almost there. And again, God is trying over and over and over. I am trying to help you. I'm trying to rescue you. I want you to see what makes for good. And over and over, we see specifically the kings, because they have the power. And we see God's people just saying, I think I'm going to go with the bad. Because what I think, or what I have defined as bad, isn't as bad as what I think might happen. All right, Jeremiah chapter 38. This is a long section. I'd like a couple volunteers, please. Jeremiah chapter 38, we are going to start in verse 14. And Matt, if you will read 14 through 19. 14 through the end of 19. And then picking it up, Josh is going to pick it up in chapter 38, starting in verse 20, and then finish out the chapter for us.
Then King Zedekiah sent and had Jeremiah the prophet brought to him at the third entrance that is in the house of the Lord. And the king said to Jeremiah, I'm going to ask you something. Do not hide anything from me. Then Jeremiah said to Zedekiah, if I tell you, will you not certainly put me to death? Besides, if I give you advice, you will not listen to me. But King Zedekiah swore to Jeremiah in secret, saying, as the Lord lives, who made this life for us, surely I will not put you to death, nor will I give you over to the hand of those men who are seeking your life. Then Jeremiah said to Zedekiah, thus says the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, if you will indeed go out to the officers of the king of Babylon, then you will live. This city will not be burned with fire, and you and your household will survive. But if you will not go out to the officers of the king of Babylon, then the city will be given over to the hand of the Chaldeans, and they will burn it with fire, and you yourself will not escape from their hand. Then King Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, I dread the Jews who have gone over to the Chaldeans, for they may give me over into their hand, and they will abuse me.
They will not hand you over, Jeremiah replied. Obey the Lord by doing what I tell you. Then it will go well with you, and your life will be spared. But if you refuse to surrender, this is what the Lord has revealed to me. All the women left in the palace of the king of Judah will be brought out to the officials of the kings of Babylon. Those women will say to you, they misled you and overcame you. Those trusted friends of yours, your feet are sunk in the mud. Your friends have deserted you. All your wives and children will be brought out to the Babylonians. You yourself will not escape from their hands, but will be captured by the king of Babylon. And this city will be burned down. Then Zedekiah said to Jeremiah, do not let anyone know about this conversation, or you may die. If the officials hear what I talked with you, and they come to you and say, tell us what you said to the king, and what the king said to you, do not hide it from us, or we will kill you. Then tell them, I was pleading with the king not to send me back to Jonathan's house to die there. All the officials did come to Jeremiah and question him, and he told them everything the king had ordered him to say. So they said no more to him, for no one had heard of this conversation with the king. And Jeremiah remained in the courtyard of the guard until the day Jerusalem was captured.
Okay, so you remember last week Jeremiah's thrown in the hole, and the king says, I can't stop you. You guys want to do this to Jeremiah. And then the Ethiopian comes and he says, King, they've done a terrible thing to the prophet. I need to rescue him. Okay, go. You have my blessing. And so Jeremiah has been thrown down there. He's back out of the hole. He's in the court, and finally the king comes back to him. King has not listened to a word that he said, but he keeps on coming back and saying, a message from the Lord? What's God saying these days? What's God saying these days? And Jeremiah has, I'd say interesting, it's a pretty natural response. At this point in the story, Jeremiah is going, why do you care what God is saying? Why do you keep asking me? Why do you keep asking me? And so he says there in verse 15, if I tell you, you're going to have me killed. If I tell you what God says, you're going to have me killed. And if I tell you what you should do, you're not going to listen to me anyway. No. Okay, all right. This time, Jeremiah, it's fine. I'm going to listen, and I promise, nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing's going to happen to you. How frustrating is that, right? You keep on trying to warn someone. Don't do that. That's dangerous. What does this do? Now, don't touch that. That will hurt you. I wonder what this does. Maybe it won't hurt me this time, right? It's just frustrating, and that's where Jeremiah is. And the king is like, no, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. We need to know. We need to know. The message from God, even at this point, God's message is mercy. Now, earlier in the story, he said, if you will turn back to God, he will spare his city. There's still a chance. There's still hope. Now, he doesn't say that this time, does he? He does not. God's mercy is still evident. But you'll notice something has changed. The city is done for. No matter what the king does, no matter how he responds, the fate of Jerusalem is done. The city is done. He says, however, if you will turn yourself over, if you will give in, you will live. Not only that, but what was the rest of the promise? If the king actually does what God says at this point, Jeremiah tells him what's going to happen. The city won't burn. It'll be taken over, but it will survive. The city itself will survive. You will survive. The city won't burn. And what was number 3? Your family will live. You got one more shot, king. Give it up. You will live. Your family will live. And the city will live. This is it, Zedekiah. You give it up. Give yourself over to our enemy, and God is going to spare you, your family, and the city. What more could you possibly want? And he said, well, I can't, because what was the emotion he said? What was he? What? You're scared. God is going to deliver you if you are faithful to him. If you turn back to God and do the right thing, God is going to show you mercy, and he's afraid. He is afraid to do what God tells him to do because he goes, yeah, but there's other people in this situation. There's some people who've already run to the enemy, and if I give myself up to the enemy, they'll treat me bad. They'll say mean things about me. They'll treat me with violence. They will hurt me. Now, what does Jeremiah say to that? He says, God's going to protect you. So the king is told what will happen if he turns back. If he does the right thing, he's told all of these things will be spared. Then his fear, he reveals his fear and says, well, but then I'll be mistreated by the people who are already out there. Nope. God won't let that happen either. God will take care of you. And the king says, well, you go hang out for a while. And in essence, basically, he thinks about it. He thinks about it. I know this was, anybody remember Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid? He said, When he had his enemy down, he said, live or die. That's what Jeremiah says to the king, live or die. And he's hoping for a honk. God's trying to honk his nose and just spare him. And he's like, we'll see. We'll see. So let me ask you this question. What does it look like? Because the king does not experience this. Hopefully we do. What does it look like to fear God more than anything else? Obedience. Obedience.
Because this looks like to me, it doesn't look any different. I mean, our situations aren't as extreme. Zedekiah keeps asking for a word of God, but he's picking through what he likes and what he doesn't. And we do that. Oh, God said get to the poor, but God said to, turn the other cheek, but, this one. We do it, God said this, but I prefer the other. And it's just, that's exactly what he's doing. It's strange and it's obedience to the fear of God. Like I said, his situation's more extreme than ours, but we like to read those verses and make us feel good. Take the words of God and make us feel good. The ones that make us want to change, those are a little bit harder to deal with. Those take a little bit more faith and trust in God than the ones in life that we don't trust in God.
Yeah, because it almost feels like the king just keeps on going back to God, just hoping he'll say something easier, right? That God will say, oh, okay, well, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. Would that be much comfort to you? If God said, I was just kidding. No, that wouldn't bring me much comfort either. If God just said, no, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. He offers mercy again and again, and it does. When we fear God more than any other circumstance, it looks like obedience. We listen to what God says, and we do it. We do it. And Aaron's right. You and I play this same game that Zedekiah plays. You and I play this same game. Did God really say that? Oh, wait a minute. Who did that sound like? The serpent in the garden the very first time. Did God really say that? It's a game you and I play with God. Whose voice are we using? So, we play Zedekiah's game. Did God really say that? Is that really what he wants from me? Yes, he wants you to trust him enough to do what he says. Yeah, but other people might mistreat me. Well, as we're going to see in the next chapter, there is no one else that can bring it like God can. There is no one, and there is no earthly punishment that can compare to what God can do. So, the king stays put. Now, I like the end of this. I don't have a lot of time for it, but I think it's kind of interesting. What does Jeremiah do to the people who ask him? He lies. He lies. He's not perfect. He is God's man. He speaks God's word. He lies to save his own bacon, to keep out of trouble. He's not perfect. He's not without sin. He's not Jesus. He's not Jesus. But, however, we'll see in the next chapter, he's still okay. He's still okay. All right, Jeremiah 39. Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 1. Here it is. Here it is. Ooh. Okay, let's see. 1 through 5. Steve, 1 through 5, and then 6 through 10. 6 through 10. Tony, Terry, you got 6 through 10. All right, gentlemen, go ahead.
This is how Jerusalem was taken. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army and laid siege to it. And on the 9th day of the 4th month of Zedekiah's 11th year, the city wall was broken through. Then all the officials of the king of Babylon came and
Hazael, Radan, the captain of the bodyguard, left behind in the land of Judah, and gave them vineyards and fields at that time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here it is. The Babylonians have surrounded the city. They've surrounded the city, and they camp out there. I'm sure they're shooting arrows, rocks, stones, whatever. A year and a half. A year and a half, Jerusalem is trapped inside her own city. That means no trade, no food. We don't have time to read it tonight, but I'd encourage you for some light reading. Go read Lamentations chapter 4 this week. Lamentations chapter 4 describes the horrors of the siege. Mothers were cooking and eating their own children because they had no food. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. They're starving. They're starving. And finally, after a year and a half, they break through the wall. After a year and a half, they break through the wall. They go into the center. And these 5 leaders are right in the center of town. And as they break through the wall and they get to the center of town, the king, he's out. The king's got a tunnel. And he and his noblemen, those that have given Jeremiah such a hard time. Jeremiah said, you need to turn back to God or bad things are going to happen. These are the same guys that said, hey, Jeremiah's trying to turn people against us, and he's weakening the hands of the soldiers. Well, the king and all of his noblemen, they run out in the dead of night. And the geography here is important. They almost make it. They almost make it. They are almost to the river. They are almost to the Jordan River. And they get caught. They get caught. And so his armies capture them, bring them back, and there's an important order to what happens. His family is killed, his servants are killed, and then they gouge his eyes out. So they make him watch, they make the king watch these horrible things happen to all the people that are closest to him. Then they poke his eyes out and they make him walk back in chains, and he's going to go back to Babylon in exile. And then the Babylonians make it back to Jerusalem, and they take a lot of the people. They take most of the people. And this is building up to where we find Daniel in a few years. So the king has taken a bunch of people out, and he leaves the poorest, those who don't have anything. Now, he's nice to them. He lets them have the land, right? They didn't have anything before. They didn't own anything. Now, at this time, the land isn't worth much. It's not producing anything. They don't have anything. So he leaves them. He leaves the poorest of the poor there, and he takes others with him. Yeah, go read Lamentations chapter 4 this week, just to feel some of this story. All right, I want to catch the end of this chapter. Verse 11. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, gave command concerning Jeremiah through Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, saying, take him, look after him well, and do him no harm, but deal with him as he tells you. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, Nebuchadnezzar, and Rabsaris, Nergal-Sarezer, the Rabmag, and all the chief officers of the king of Babylon sent and took Jeremiah from the court of the guard. They entrusted him to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and of that he should take him home. So he lived among the people. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah while he was shut up in the court of the guard. Go and say to Ebed-melech, the Ethiopian, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will fulfill my words against this city for harm and not for good, and they shall be accomplished before you on that day. But I will deliver you on that day, declares the Lord, and you shall not be given into the hand of men of whom you are afraid. For I will surely save you, and you shall not fall by the sword, but you shall have your life as a prize of war, because you have put your trust in me, declares the Lord. All right, so what we have in the second half of chapter 39, we have the bad things that happen to the king, but then we see God's mercy towards his prophet and towards his faithful foreigner. This is the Ethiopian that rescued Jeremiah out of the well. Now, one of the greatest things to take from all of that. And Jeremiah is taken care of pretty well. The king says to his guys, hey, whatever he needs, you give it to him. You take care of him. He's your responsibility. His safety is on your hands. You take care of him. And then he says, and tell the Ethiopian, you were faithful, you did what was good, your life is going to be spared. In fact, your life is a prize of war. Now, church, I want to give you a little bit of perspective. The next time you're trying to decide whether things are good or bad, if you feel anything, your life is a prize of the battle. That is perspective. That is perspective. I just want to complain about how things are going. Well, you're alive to complain. Congratulations. There are many others who have not lived long enough to complain today. You're here, drawing breath. Your life is a prize of the battle that you have just been through. Praise be to God. Praise be to God. All right. Turn over. I just want to read a couple verses from Lamentations 3. Lamentations 4 is awful. Lamentations 3 is amazing. Lamentations 3:22. Jeremiah would say and write these things in the midst of one another. Bad things are still happening, but he has his life as a prize of war. So he writes in Lamentations 3:22, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. My soul gets to say, God is my portion. Whatever I have, God gives it. Whatever it is that I need, God provides it. And every day that I am able to get up, wake up, draw breath, and walk around in this life, God's mercies are brand new. That's the song that Jeremiah sang. That is what he was able to pen for us in the midst of the horrors of chapter 4. And I encourage you, when you are going through a very difficult time and you are looking and all you're seeing is all the bad all around you, remember that your life is a spoil of war. And God's mercy is refreshed every single day. That's how we can be obedient. That's how we can listen to the voice of the Lord even when others try to harm us, even when others go against us, even when all it seems is there's just so much bad all around us. God is our portion. God is our portion. And he keeps on calling us back to mercy because he's got a lot of it. So, blessed be the name of the Lord. Have a wonderful week.